Hello, welcome back to the Podcasters Podcast. I'm Ash and I'm here with Kane. And today we're going to talk about something that popped up on LinkedIn recently. I've been talking about a bit on there. And it's, are the podcast charts relevant? What's your thoughts on it, Kane?
It depends on the podcaster, but I'm going to say most people, yes. And it's for a few main reasons. First of all, if you are a podcaster and it's related to your business, and it is mostly a commercial or brand building exercise, then here is the most important thing about the charts for you. Everyone's got Facebook, everyone's got their own Facebook group, everyone's got LinkedIn, these things have been around for years, right? One thing that those channels don't have is a chart system or a ranking system. Everybody, yes, they've got followers, but more followers doesn't really necessarily mean that you're better in any way, because you can buy followers and you could just be around for longer. It doesn't really mean anything. So let's say, for example, you've got two marketing agencies. You both have LinkedIn and you're both going after the same client. Well, that client might do their due diligence and have a look at what's available. And if one of you, or if both of you got LinkedIn and you're both putting out good content and whatever, they think it looks all right, but one of you has a podcast and that podcast happens to be top 10 or number 1 in marketing, guess who's getting that client? Mm-hmm. It's going to be the one with a number 1 podcast. Because how do you get to number 1? Well, first of all, that's a whole different episode and we'll link it in the show notes. But essentially, it's by people listening and following to your show. So people are voting with their feet, or their ears in this case, and listening to you. And that is voting you to the top, which means you must know your stuff. It adds credibility to you. And that is going to help you secure business. And, there's a few other benefits that we can go into, but I think that is the main one, that if you're doing it for commercial reasons, it's going to help massively build your brand, build your authority and your credibility within your sector.
Absolutely. Because, well, first of all, it's something that within the podcast industry, it's recently kind of been seen that actually it's not that hard to get in the charts. Maybe the system isn't as impressive, or it's not as valuable to be in there within the podcast industry. However, you've got to remember, if you're a business, the people that you're appealing to aren't in the podcast industry. So although another podcaster might see top 10 in this industry was actually not that hard to get there, because there's certain ways around it of kind of cheating it. But if you're looking for some sales training, or like you said, a marketing agency, and one of them has a number 1 sales podcast or a number 1 marketing podcast, you don't know anything about podcasts, and that instantly, like you said, builds your social proof, makes you look a lot more credible within that sector. And it definitely makes a difference for those kind of people.
Yeah, 100%. And on your point of being within the podcasting sort of space and sector, I think it is valuable for 2 main reasons. So anybody who's a podcaster, if you approach a high-level guest or a potential sponsor before you launch your podcast, or perhaps you've got a podcast that's live but hasn't really done an awful lot, you say, "Hello, Mr. Guest, will you come on my show? Hello, Mr. Sponsor, will you sponsor my show?" They might say yes, they might say no. But I've seen time and time again, people get turned down for both sponsors and guests, then go and get number 1 in the charts, and then suddenly it's the reverse. Yes, actually, I will come onto your show.
It all comes down to that credibility, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So Darren Jameson's got the Engaging Marketer podcast. That got to number 1 in marketing. Ranked really high in business, absolutely smashed his launch, did a really good job of it. Very good podcast. I recommend people check it out. But the same thing happened to him. No, no, I won't be a guest, or no, not yet. Oh, you're number 1. What are you doing next week? And so it's like, as a podcaster, those are fundamental things that if you're an interview show, you need guests, and ideally you want sponsors. So absolutely, that will definitely help you in the long run. And one thing that I noticed wasn't mentioned at all, sort of in the chain on LinkedIn, is discoverability. One of the weakest points of podcasting, because it's got no algorithm, which is a good thing. You know, nobody owns the content but you. But it also means nobody's pushing the content whilst you sleep. You know, if you upload to YouTube, the algorithm's working for you. And discoverability on YouTube is great. It's quite easy to find new creators, new content. Podcasts, not so much. So if you can get to the charts, especially if you're ranking highly, you know, top 20, then that's hundreds or thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that might stumble upon your show, on your little artwork, that never would have seen it anyway. So now by getting to the charts, you're being seen by people that wouldn't have normally seen you, who are now new listeners. And those people might share your show with their friends and family. So now your show is growing over time. So personally, for those reasons, adding credibility to your profession, getting more yeses from sponsors, getting more yeses from guests, and discoverability, for those 4 reasons, I think the charts are very important and should be taken seriously, and everybody should follow a very strict launch process to ensure they get in the charts.
So realistically, for new podcasts, because it is easier to get into those charts if you follow a certain process than people realise, it's definitely got to be seen as a positive, hasn't it? Although people are almost complaining about it, saying, oh, anyone can get in the charts if you're a new podcast. That's great. If you do it properly, then the benefits to it are phenomenal, as people, like you say, with the credibility, with the sponsors, guests, all the main things, that plays a big part of it. Being able to say you're a number 1 podcast can make a massive difference.
Yeah, and you only need that screenshot once, by the way. Like, it's good. There's a lot of benefit to just, you know, constantly repeating the process, getting in the charts. But once you've got that screenshot once, save that bad boy on your phone. And
you're number 1 forever.
Yeah, basically. So any guest you reach out to, any sponsor, any whatever, then you can just always say you're a number 1 podcaster.
Absolutely.
Because nobody can take that away from you. Okay, thank you, everybody. If you would love to leave a review with a question, we do read all of our reviews and we'll create an episode specifically to answer your question. So thank you very much for joining us this week, and we'll see you next time.
Cheers.
If you want help getting your podcast to number 1 in the charts, then feel free to reach out. Our contact information is down below.